Hello, it's 9 p.m. in RTD. It's time to English New Edition for tonight headlines. We have the meeting on the implementation of COVID-19 control sites in railway stations between the Minister of Health and the Minister of Transport. For the national scene, G7 summit vaccines climate leaders held a united front. Welcome to our newsroom. At the initiative of the President of the National Assembly, Mohammed Ali Hamad, and in accordance with the Article 12 and 21 of the rules of the procedures of the parliamentary institution, the Conference of the Presidents held this Monday, June 2021, its traditional statutory meeting programming the activities of Parliament in the second half of June. This conference focused on the transmission of pending texts to the Standing Committee and the determinations of the date of the next plenary government. The government was represented by the Prime Minister Abdul Qadir Kamil Mohammed, and the audience consisted of the two vice presidents and the chair of the Standing Committee. On the first part, 4 bills were transferred to the relevant committee. Yesterday morning, the new Minister of Interior, Said Nuh Hassan, has a series of meetings with diplomats accredited to Djibouti and representative of partners. The minister received in audience the French ambassador accredited to the Republic of Djibouti, Mr. Arnaud Guillois. The courtesy visit came after the appointment of the new Minister of Interior in the new government. The minister welcomed the French ambassador, who congratulated him for his new appointment. The discussion is focused on the cooperation between Djibouti and France, which shared strong. They also discussed issues of common interest. This morning, the Minister of Interior, Said Nuh Hassan had a series of meetings with the representative of partners and the Director General of the NPI. First, the minister received the representative of UNDP, Fatima El Sheikh. The meeting was an opportunity for the ministers and the Minister of Interior and the UNDP representatives to get to know each other. The discussions were extended to the development programs conducted together. Subsequently, the Minister of Interior received in audience the Director General of the National Agency for the Disabled Person, Mr. Douale Said Mahmoud. The recently created NPH has its mission is the support and promotion of people with the disability. During the meeting, the Minister of the Interior noted the intense efforts of the NPH to facilitate the integration of disabled people in the market. The new Minister of Interior, Said Nuh Hassan, visited this yesterday afternoon the central headquarters of the National Identification Number is attached to the Directorate of the General of the Population and Family. On his arrival, the Interior Minister Said Nuh Hassan was welcomed by the Director General of the National Police, Colonel Abdullahi Abdi Farah, and the Director General of the Population and Family, Mr. Ahmed Umar Jama. These buildings, which is next to the Central Police Station, houses the offices of the National Identification Number Project. The ministers visited the different counters that these new services houses. We can mention the counter of the civil studies, the driving licenses, the counter of foreign workers. The visit of the Minister of Interior continued with a meeting to present the state of progress of the National Identification Number, as well as the presentations of these new ambitious programs that our country which will launch in the coming days. The different stages of this project initiated by the head of state were also presented. the Minister of Health, Dr. Ahmed Roble Abdille, and the Minister of Infrastructure and Equipment, Hassan Hamad Arbahim, held an important bipartisan meeting to put in place health control and control in stations in anticipation of the upcoming resumptions of passenger trains on the Djibouti-Addis Ababa corridor. This meeting aims to enable Djiboutians to travel by train safely through the implementation of appropriate measures to facilitate their movement while ensuring impermeability against the risks of introductions of the virus. To this end, the Minister of Health, in partnership with the Minister of Infrastructure and Equipment, will provide control sites to COVID-19 to ensure a safe movement of passengers and holiday makers at the departures and arrival. The two departments have also set up a bipartite technical committee that is responsible for setting up all these health control systems in the station. The Minister of Labor organized this morning at the People's Palace a national workshop of preliminary consultations and reflection on the formalization. This workshop is part of the new missions given to it by the decree setting the attributions of the Ministries of Labor in charges of formalization and social protection has engaged under the impetus of the Minister of Labor Ismail Ibrahim Roble in broad reflections on formalization through a broad and deep consultation with the institutional actors involved in this issue. The workshop was chaired by the Minister of Labor in charges of formalization social protection, Ismail Ibrahim Roble. The recommendations resulting from this exchange process will be largely taken into account. A working committee will be established. The workshop was attended by the Minister of the Secretary General of the Minister of the Working, Mr. Abdullah Ali Mohammed, the Director of ANFIP, INAP, and Sharmake Idris Ali, and the representative of the multi-sectoral department concerned. For his part, the Minister of Labor in charge of formalization, Osman Ibrahim Roble, has indicated the recommendations resulting from this exchange process will be largely taken into account. A working committee will be established. The Minister of National Education, Vocational Training, Mustafa Mohammed Mahmoud, made an inspection towards this morning to ensure the smooth running of the back pro tests. The minister was accompanied by a strong delegation composed of the highest officials of his department and his close collaborators. The delegation led by the minister visited successively the Industrial and Commercial High School in Arhiba and the Technical High School of Gabot. This was an opportunity for the ministerial delegations to appreciate the consequent and adequate arrangement put in place to allow candidates to take the tests in the best material and human condition. After the Industrial and Commercial High School, it was the turn of the Technical High School of Gabod to welcome the ministerial delegations received on site by the Director General of the Technical Education and Vocational Training, Mr. Abdul Qadir Hamad, and the Minister of National Education and Vocational Training, Abdul Qadir Hamad, and the principal of the school. The new Minister of Trade and Tourism, Mr. Mohamed Warsama Diriye, in his second step of the visit of the contact, has the Djibouti offices of the Industrial Commercial Property, ODEPIC. On his arrival, the minister was welcomed by the director of the ODEPIC, Ahmed Mohammed Usman, surrounded by his staff of the administration. Then the minister went to the different services office of the ODEPIC, the offices of commercial services, the service of the documentation and and training and publication. The visit of the minister continued with the presentation meeting on the history of Djibouti offices of industrial and commercial property. During this presentation, the Director General first explained the role and the missions of these public institutions. The Minister of Trade and Tourism, Mr. Mohamed Warsamad Diriye, started this morning his first visit to contact at the National Tourism Offices. On his arrival, the minister was warmly welcomed by the director of the ONTD, Mr. Usman Abdi Mohammed. Surrounded by his staff of the administration. Then the minister went to the different services office of the ONTD, where he had the explanation of the different head department. The visit of the minister is continued with a meeting to present the master plan of the tourism sector as well as the reforms of the institutional framework. This presentation was made by the director of the ONTD, the Secretary General of the Ministry of Trade and Tourism, Mr. Ali Daoud, as well as his close collaborators. As part of her meeting with her official partner, the Minister of Women and Family, Muna Usman Aden, received this Monday, June 14, 2021, in her cabinet the representative of UNICEF in Djibouti, Ms. Melva Johnson, accompanied by her deputy, Frank Abey, and Mr. Sayaku Isui, Head of Education and Adolescent Development Section, Ms. Karen Andri, and Program Officers for Child Protection. The representative of UNICEF, Melva Johnson, first congratulated the ministers for her appointment as head of this ministerial department, and also visited her every success in this new ministry. During the first meeting, the two parties discussed several topics focused on the flagship project of the Minister of Women and Family and the Child Protection. The Minister Delegate in charge of decentralization, Qasim Harun Ali, received this Monday on a courtesy visit the French ambassador to Djibouti, Mr. Arnaud Guillois, accompanied by the councillors of the Cooperation Cultural Action, Stéphane Gallet, the head of the project Expertise France, Adil Thibault Gobrier, and the director of the French Development Agency, Philippe Collignon. On this occasion, the ambassador Arnaud Guillois congratulated the ministers on his appointment as a head of the Department Decentralization and assured him of France's support in the decentralization process. He mentioned the support provided through Expertise France, the French public agency in charge of support programs for decentralization, and local initiative, the French Development Agency in charge for the support project of the governance of the city of Djibouti, which will soon enter into implementation. Besides his projects, the ambassador drew the attention of the minister to the components of twinning and decentralized cooperation, which he said he cared about. He informed the ministers of the progress of the project underway in the area with the great region of Provence, Alpes, and Côte d'Azur. A workshop to raise awareness and share information is Djibouti program was held this morning at the hotel of the capital, presided by the Secretary General of the Ministry of Environment, Dini Abdallah Umar, and the Program of Support to the Global Monitoring for Environment and Security of Africa, GMSA, and Africa is a flagship program of the African Union Commissions in the framework of the African Space Policy and Strategy. It is about paving the way for the continent to be globally competitive in space activity, including Earth observation (EO), and to develop a viable continental network. For his part, the Secretary General of the Ministry of Environment and Sustainable Development, Dini Abdallah Umar, in his speech first welcomed the experts and participants at the opening of the workshop. The second session of the baccalaureate exam for high school children from the refugee community started in Ali Ade village. A delegation led by the prefect of the region, Musa Adam Migane, the composed of the representative of the High Commissioner Refugee High Commissioner for Refugee UNHCR in Djibouti, Yohamdam Kul Sakar, and the Executive Directors of the National Offices for Assistance of the Refugee and Disaster Victims Hussein Hassan Darar went yesterday to the refugee camp of Ali Ade. The purpose of this trip was to supervise the second sessions of the baccalaureate exam for the high school students from the refugee community. This end of high school exam is entirely organized and supervised by the Minister of National Education and Professional Training. For this purpose, the member of the United Nations systems and his companion immersed themselves in the Nelson Mandela Secondary School in the refugee camp of Ali Ade. The composition of the oral and writing tests of this type of school examinations of the baccalaureate began on the spot. The representative of the different refugee community at the administrative centers of the refugee camp, the spokespersons for the refugee, all thanked the head of state and the Minister of Education for the integrations of their schools into the national school systems. It was our desire and all dream in terms of school education. Now fulfilled, they say the visitors in Ali Ade, the refugee community expressed their strong approval for the delivery of academic diploma to their students following the example of Djiboutian High School. We are very sorry to announce the death of the late Daher Hosh Douale on Saturday, June 12, 2021 in Djibouti. The deceased leaves a large family, including widow, 3 daughters, and 10 grandchildren. The late Daher Hosh Douale began his career at the port of Djibouti in 1979 and in the infrastructure department, where he was the head of services until his retirement in 2012. Sharing the pain of the family, the late Daher Hosh, we present our sincere condolence to all the family of the late Inna Lillahi wa Inna Ilayhi Raji'un. For the international scene, G7 summit vaccines climate leaders held a united front. The summit of the 7 most industrialized countries in Curtis Bay, Cornwall, ended on Saturday, 13 June, after 3 days of intense discussions. The various head of state spoke in turns at the press conference. At the end of the summit, German Chancellor Angela Merkel led the way, hailing a new impetus for the G7 with the arrival of Joe Biden in the United States. The G7 has agreed to distribute more than 1 billion vaccines against the coronavirus by the end of 2021-2022 in the hope of eradicating the pandemic, said British Prime Minister Boris Johnson. France will double its donations of vaccine doses against COVID-19 to 60 million by the end of the year, said Emmanuel Macron at a press conference after the summit. This is it for the news. Thanks for watching us. Have a good evening.